Hey Sterlin, what's up? How you doing?
Hey Pat, how's it going, brother?
Oh, it's going great. How you been since Mexico, since Anarchapulco?
Yeah, man, been doing really well. Had a couple of things happen that were unexpected, but that's the nature of life. Sometimes things happen and you have to pivot and move forward and do good things, brother.
You
So,
want to elaborate on those things?
what's that?
You want to elaborate on those things?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. So I was working with Bitcoin.com in the cryptocurrency space as their communications ambassador. So I'm no longer with Bitcoin.com, mainly due to market conditions at the time. And after that happened, one of the things that came out of that was I started getting really comfortable, I think, while I was working with Bitcoin.com, and I wasn't exploring some other areas that I could have explored. And I think this is a pretty common theme throughout people's lives. If they get comfortable doing one particular thing, maybe they start to wear blinders about other ideas. So as soon as I got finished with Bitcoin.com, I thought, why don't I start my own venture in the space, my own company? So I started a company called PathFinders. PathFinders is a marketing agency, marketing firm / growth advisory in the crypto space. And we only work with companies specifically that are crypto related or possibly blockchain related, but also who share values with us, because we come onto their team as an extension. So, and that's been working out really well so far. Got a lot of good hits, got the site up, but we're still in the early stages. So.
Very, very cool. So you got PathFinders and Psychologic Anarchist sort of coexisting?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Psychologic Anarchist, I created Psychologic Anarchist really, really early on, and we can get more into this. And I created the Facebook page and then the website. The Facebook page, I got up to 50,000 followers, but I don't know if you knew this or not, Pat. Whenever Facebook conducted the purges and they purged Alex Jones, and then they started purging libertarian sites and anyone who didn't fit in with the mainstream consciousness, so to speak, all of those people got removed. And actually Psychologic Anarchist, the Facebook page, was one of those that was purged with it. So a lot of people, when their pages got purged, one that comes to mind is Jason Baylor's The Free Thought Project. His has been purged like 3 or 4 times. But after it was purged, he created it again and again and again. I think he's got Free Thought Project 3.0. I decided not to reboot Psychologic Anarchist, except I still go by that moniker from time to time, but instead I created Sterlin Lujan and just decided to start promoting myself strictly. But like I said, the Psychologic Anarchist name still lives on, and the website Psychologic Anarchist is still up as well. So.
Awesome. Yeah, so you have this like anarchical psychological aspect to blockchain as well. And just to take a step back, I want to thank you for introducing us to Alex and essentially catalyzing our partnership with Coinvention and Philly Blockchain Week. And we're also going to do an awesome free speech rally on Wednesday during the middle of the week. It would be awesome if you were there for that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad that worked out and you guys were able to connect. That made me extremely happy. Alex is a good guy, and you guys have been really good to me so far and have been awesome. So I'm glad to see that relationship flourish, and I hope you're able to continue working with Alex to various degrees. Yeah, it just kind of worked out that Alex reached out to me, had mentioned that he noticed that your event, was curious if I knew who was involved, and I said, yep, I actually do know who's involved. Let me grab those folks up. It worked out.
Yeah, it was great. You spoke there last year. Carmen did an interview with you as well. And I actually, that was very eye-opening for me, some of the things that you said in that, because we share a lot of similar history, which probably in your life had an impact on the Psychological Anarchist sort of project that you were doing. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I talk a bit about my past here, so any of your viewers, if they're not familiar with who I am, they'll get an idea really quick. So I got into the libertarian and the anarchist space, of course, well before I got into cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, didn't come around until Bitcoin in 2009, although those ideas were certainly alive and well. Actually kind of funny, in 2009, I was actually arrested for possession of MDMA and cocaine. And a little prior to that arrest, we'll get more into that, but prior to it, I was just sleepwalking and slobbering through life. It was just your average law-abiding taxpayer who didn't really think about the repercussions of all of these laws and regulations in society. And then I decided to take MDMA. And I took MDMA. I hung out with a very close friend of mine, and he said, you have to try this. You got to try this thing. And I didn't know what the thing was. I went over to his house, and he opened his hand, and there was a little red pill. Of course it had to be red.
Yeah, great.
Took the pill, and as I started to peak on MDMA, as I started to come up and feel the full effects of it, I started to think that I hadn't really given myself credit for my intelligence. I thought, man, I'm a lot smarter than anyone's ever told me, or that I ever even considered myself. And I believe strongly this had to do with all the indoctrination and propaganda and all of that nonsense that we're spoon-fed ever since we're a child in this society. And I was also in like remedial math classes. I didn't do really well in high school, and I realized in retrospect that was because I had a disobedient, anti-authoritarian mindset. I remember reading my own books and doing my own thing rather than following the curriculum that they try to lay down for you in United States public schooling system. So I did that. I woke up, I had that insight, and it was a really emotional time too, because I also, a lot of trauma that I had gone through when I was younger came to light, and it was a really difficult time to have to deal with that, plus simultaneously waking up to the nature of reality. So it was all this really strong degree of healing that coalesced in that moment. And then as I started to move forward, I started reading because I wanted to actually gain knowledge and insight. It wasn't just reading for the sake of pleasure. Even back then when I read, when I was like in high school, I was reading my own books and being anti-authoritarian, but I didn't really have a label or a tag or an intellectual understanding of what I was doing. So now I wanted to read to actually gain knowledge and insight about what's going on in the world. And then I also decided I wanted to go back to school. In retrospect, I don't really care much for college. I think that mostly it's a scam, especially as we move into the future and more electronic and digital ways of learning and educating oneself has emerged. But I did go back to school. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, but I was heavily influenced from my psychology degree. And then one day I decided that I wanted to combine my ideas of psychology with anarchism. And of course, this all happened after I was arrested. After I got arrested, by the way, and for possession of MDMA and cocaine, it was about 500 pills and 26 grams of cocaine. That's when I was already thinking, but that's when I finally realized that what had happened to me at the hands of the state was wrong. I was aggressed against by these individuals for simply engaging in market transactions, for engaging in voluntary exchanges. It never hurt anybody in the process of trading and selling drugs. If someone hurt themselves as a result of that, of course, it was their own choice for whatever reason. Of course, nothing ever happened, but if they would have, say, overdosed, that would have been their own fault for lack of understanding and education. Just like if somebody dies in an accident related to drunk driving, it's not the liquor store guy's fault, right? So anyway, that happened, and then I finally started reading about anarchism and learning about it, and then I combined the psychology with the anarchist ideas to create Psychological Anarchist. And then once I did that, I came up with a philosophy that I still talk about to this day. I haven't talked about it as much recently because I've been so heavily interested in the cryptocurrency space. And I started to, we'll talk more about this, but I made some headway, I think, in cryptocurrency and psychology and anarchism, and trying to combine and merge and figure out a way to articulate those ideas as one. But when I came up with psychological anarchism, I created a philosophy called relational anarchism. And I know that's a mouthful. All it means is if we can make more connections, humane connections with our fellow humans, and learn to communicate empathetically, we're already doing everything we can to build a more peaceful, anarchistic society, right? Because having compassion toward each other and understanding is antithetical to initiatory aggression and violence. So it's automatically this package deal of freedom and compassion that emerges naturally as we interact with each other in peaceful and dignified ways, right? Because if I'm actively being compassionate and empathetic with you, what that means is it's very unlikely that I'm going to feel the need or the desire to use violence against you. And this is why the state, this is why government in its nature is a cold, detached antiseptic, sterile entity, right? Because it's all bureaucratic. It's all detached writing of laws, attempting to form some kind of law or regulation through a paperwork process, and then passing that down the line for somebody to obey, right? No, very little emotion goes into that, because if emotion went into it, everybody would immediately, instantaneously realize the evils that they're perpetrating, right? Because compassion and evil do not go hand in hand. So that's basically a breakdown of what I did with psychological anarchism. And I think why I was able to grow it so quickly, it was really a new incarnation of anarchism, or at least a new way to look at it. And some people have simply described it as a strategy to reach, anarcho-capitalist ends. But even people on the left side of the anarchist spectrum, I think could find some ideas there that they resonate with. And that indeed did happen.
So this whole philosophy basically came from drug experimentation.
Yeah, it came from a mixture of drug experimentation, my tests with MDMA. And when I was younger, I did MDMA a whole lot. I don't recommend.
I was going to ask you, how extensive were those trials, or do you still use MDMA on a casual basis, or at what point were you using it as like very frequently?
Yeah. So when I was, let's see, around that time frame between 2005 and 2009, up until the point when I was kidnapped by the state.
Dude,
I was
same story.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know you've talked briefly, but one of these days we'll have to sit down and you'll tell me more about your story in depth. I know you gave me a hint of it, but yeah, 2005, 2009, I was using it really regularly. And the pills at that time, the pressed MDMA tabs, at least the ones that I were getting, were extremely potent. Some of them were probably MDA, which is qualitatively different in terms of effects, more hallucinogenic, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I was using it several times a month, if not more. And that's not really recommended with MDMA. One, because if you use it a whole lot, the effects tend to wear off. They say it loses its magic.
Yeah, sort of like LSD as well. If it's got like a very long half-life, you have to wait days to take more, and then it just eventually doesn't work anymore once you have like an overload of LSD in your system.
Yeah, well said. That actually happened to me after a couple of years of doing it pretty regularly. Of course, with a couple of month breaks here and there, it started to lose its effect. And then at the very end, right before I was arrested, I took like a 3 months or 6 month hiatus, and then I picked it up again, and then of course started dealing. And then I was arrested, but like 3 days before I arrested, I rolled balls so hard. I was so like, it was a really intense. And I remember the last pills I used had Homer Simpson etched on the on the
That's
pill.
funny.
There are a couple of different Simpson stylized MDMA pills, but yeah, it was during that time too. I did a lot of the thing with MDMA is it really, because it dumps serotonin, and serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for our emotional sensitivities. It also causes a cascade effect in the brain that releases neurohormones like oxytocin, which is the hug molecule. And when this happens, it tends to make you more sensitive to people around you, more empathetic to people around you, and wanting to just be generally close. And so MDMA really woke me up to this internal sense of wanting to make a connection with another person and empathize with another person. It wasn't detached, and the boundaries seemed to dissolve in such a way that it was easy to communicate with people, even if you disagreed. And so, yeah, this really formed the basis of my psychological anarchist philosophy. And I thought, man, why can't we all the time be like this, like we're on MDMA and have these close connections? Now, I do want to mention something from the perspective of harm reduction, though. MDMA can cause problems, right? I'm not here saying that it's an absolutely perfect wonder drug and everybody can take it all the time with no potential repercussions. There are potential repercussions. One is a lot of MDMA pills can be adulterated, have things in it that's not MDMA. Number two is you can drink too much water or too less water while you're out dancing at the club, and you can die. Lots of people have died that way, actually. I say lots, but enough people have died that way. Too many have died as a result of that. But I think the worst thing that can happen is you can get, if you're in an environment where you don't really know the people, you can get close to people superficially. and then you can get taken advantage of. I remember one time I was at a rave in Dallas, and I took MDMA, and someone then tried to sell me, some random person tried to sell me some LSD. Anyway, I bought a bunch of LSD from this person. It all ended up being bunk. So that's a storyline.
It happens.
Yeah, that it does. So I guess I'm glad that it wasn't worse than bunk, right?
Do you have experience with other psychedelic drugs or any other types of drugs that may have impacted you in a psychological way?
Yeah, during that time period, I experimented with a lot of different designer drugs, as they call them, right? Different variations of MDMA, moving a few molecules around, etc. One of them that comes to mind was 2CB. I did that a couple of times, and I
don't like it. I don't like it. Did 2CI, 2CB. Yeah, I don't know. It's just too weird and stuff like that. How about like more like entheogens, like DMT?
So I've actually never tried DMT before. I am very open.
My like right around the same period as you, 2009 or so. Like I spent like 2 years just making DMT and smoking DMT by myself and like learning this spiritual world and stuff. And it changed me so much, like your drug experiences had on you. And then I went off and I was just selling my spiritual awakening. And then I got busted too. It's just too funny.
Yeah, you're right.
Right around the same time.
Right around that time period.
You got to smoke some DMT, man. You'll love it.
I'm game.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So that makes sense, man. You right around that same time. That seemed to be an intense period for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, me too. It's like right around 2012 too. It's very, very strange. Like it was definitely like a coming of age, like a change of the epochs, and just super like cosmic what was going on. The Great Awakening.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, I've used mushrooms multiple times over the years. Psilocybin is one of my favorite psychedelics.
Have you ever done ketamine?
Yeah, done ketamine as well. Ketamine is really nice as well. I've never entered into a K-hole. I've mostly done it at lower.
Oh, that's the whole point. Straight to the hole.
Right.
I mean, there's a very different like energy dynamics there. It's most definitely a spiritual tool. It's very. I mean, this is my old license plate. That's a DMT molecule actually. C12H16N2. But I would never like advocate doing ketamine because I've seen it destroy a lot of my friends. It's very addictive. I was very addicted to it for a while, but it's just so bizarre and complex. It's right there with like a DMT trip, like a breakthrough free-based DMT hit. A deep K-hole experience is like right along like the same level of intensity. I would say like DMT brings you to the scintilla like immediately, and ketamine slowly brings you there. But you have no control. You end up there regardless. It's a lot more comfortable to just get there. But that was a little bit strange. But nevertheless, your Steam it. I just checked it. It said Psychologic Anarchist, MDA High Priest, and the Mr. Rogers of Anarchy. That's so funny. I just wanted to tell people what Steam was. Steam is a blockchain, a cryptocurrency where and Steam it is built on top of this. It's an application, like a blogging application. And you're pretty active on there. You want to tell people about Steam?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got into Steam. I was an early adopter of the Steam platform. I guess early 2016, I started using it. And actually, I made a video about Steam it early on, and Jeff Berwick watched that video, and then everyone and their dog in the anarchist and libertarian communities flooded over onto Steam it. But it's effectively a blogging platform, like you said, Pat, that's built on top of a blockchain. But of course, this blockchain is not like Bitcoin's blockchain, where it uses the Nakamoto style consensus mechanism. Instead, it runs on what's called delegated proof of stake. And you'll have to forgive me. I haven't kept up with what's going on in the community in terms of the changes. I know they've made a lot of changes to the token economics of Steam in the last few years, and I haven't kept up with it very well. But basically, delegated proof of stake is you write a blog post, right? You put some content out on Steam it, and then somebody who has a stake in the platform, meaning they have Steam power on the platform, which is just a token that represents voting power in the ecosystem. They can upvote your content. Depending on what their stake is, they delegate the cryptocurrency rewards to those individuals, right? So, and this is different from Bitcoin in the sense that in Bitcoin, the rewards go to the people conducting the work of mining Bitcoin. They're the ones who run the computers, the ASICs, to mint more new Bitcoin, but also keep the network secure and safe. Different with Steemit in the sense that it's with delegated proof of stake, the rewards are always being delegated out by people upvoting and using their power. But this is an important point. Steemit also has a system of witnesses that do the traditional work of mining and printing of Steemit tokens.
I love Steem. I love Steem. I love the community. I think that there's a few things wrong with it. I mean, I think I'm not really a big fan of Steem power. Well, like the powering up aspect and locking your currency up for 13 weeks. I think that what DTube just released is it's an entirely like liquid token. And as long as you have it in your wallet, you have the power, but you can send it out at any time. That's a really great feature. I think removing Ned from the blockchain and his stake, which is like 70% of the coins, that's a great idea. But the community itself, and delegated proof of stake is amazing. I just wish that the community could move to its like and leave Ned behind and move to this new thing and be completely liquid. That would be like the best blockchain, you know, because it's all about the community. You can have any digital ecosystem, but without a community, it's a ghost town. You know?
Right. Yeah, no doubt. The creator of Steemit, Daniel Larimer, is an absolute genius. And being able to, he effectively created delegated proof of stake, right? And it's been one of the most scalable style of blockchains that have ever been created or created up to date. And he's also responsible, of course, for EOS, BitShares, some of the other ones that people may have heard of. But I really love it. Of course, I have my critiques just like you do, Pat. I've been disappointed with the front end of Steemit for a long time. It's very, very feature light, and I think there's a lot of features that it could deal with, but it's not always easy to build up features. And funny enough,
there are some other interfaces.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
Busy.org,
Busy, right. I was going to mention some of the other interfaces are there and good. I do use Busy sometimes, but for some reason
that's just proof of the community being there, trying to develop and make it better. And you know, the community is growing ultimately. So
it's true. I think, well, we're in a sort of an altcoin scare right now. Most of the focus has been on Bitcoin recently.
I'm buying altcoins. This is altcoin season. Buy them up, buy them up, buy them up.
Yeah, and I'll say that Steem's pretty highly undervalued. It's one of the nicely working chain processes. The steel process is some of the most transactions. So.
Yeah, on blocktivity.com, I believe you'll never see the gauge. It's always at like 0%. It's throughput. Ethereum's usually maxed out. Bitcoin's always maxed out. But the reason that I bring up Steem and Steemit and kind of like how you titled yourself there is because it's a great tool to teach people about blockchain, because we're blogging about the things that we love to do, the things that we care about, and we're also earning a crypto, and we can teach people about that. You know?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's been one of the methods that I've taught people about my own philosophies and ideas. Of course, I've spoken more about my background and past and my philosophies rather than cryptocurrencies, but talking about cryptocurrencies or Steem itself on the Steem blockchain seems to be some of the most rewarding topics and pieces of content that people have produced. And I've read a lot of really great articles that have been educational and informational for me via the Steemit blockchain. So yeah, it's highly recommended that if anybody hasn't used it before, they get on and start using it. And you can make some decent money. I mean, I make as much as some news sites that are centralized would want to pay me per article. So I average about $15 an article or a post on Steemit right now. And yeah, it takes a while. You have to build up your audience, and some people make even a lot more than that. Some people make several $100s a post on Steemit. Seen that, and that's even right now in an ecosystem that is where the valuation is lower. And of course, if the value does increase on the Steemit blockchain in the ecosystem, which I'm fairly certain it will, of course, everyone's payments goes up along with that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great way to earn cryptocurrency for free and get into the space.
That's right.
You know, get on some exchange, trade that for Bitcoin, apply it to your crypto life, your new crypto life, and so forth and so on. So let's get into Anarchadelphia. You want to give us a hint what you're going to be talking about? I mean, Sterlin is a speaker at Anarchadelphia September 13th through 15th. We got you on the schedule, and we're really stoked for you to come down. We get a little hint or two?
Yeah, sure. So one of the other, we briefly touched on it earlier, where I discussed psychological anarchism and trying to combine the components of, or a lot of the aspects of psychology with anarchism. I've also attempted to do the same thing with cryptocurrency, the cryptocurrency space, and psychology. And bear in mind, there's a couple of uses of this word, but I've talked about what's called crypto psychology quite a bit now. I've written a lot of articles on the subject. When I was with Bitcoin.com, you can still Google Sterlin Lujan, crypto psychology, Bitcoin.com, and my articles will come up. But this is what I'm going to likely be discussing alongside some other topics at Anarchadelphia. But the cool thing about crypto psychology, where I think it's beneficial and valuable, is what it's looking at is how has our behavior changed as a result of cryptocurrencies. This is something that's really ripe for study for academicians and scientists and folks who may be interested in human behavior. But previously, most of our money psychology, the way we think about money, the way that it affects our behavior, has been studied around fiat currency. But fiat currency, and for anybody who doesn't know, fiat literally means by decree. It's money that governments print out and has the face of the king etched on the coin, or the president or the politician. Generally, that's not everywhere in the world. But when we think about money, it necessarily comes with all of this extra baggage, right? All of this money symbolism that's coercive to the human psyche, because it insinuates the fact that we're ruled over by some type of politician, king, etc. Right? That's the thing with the dollar. So it warps our psychology and the way we think about money. And you can get this very easily. If you talk to anybody who has strong communist leanings, they automatically think that money is evil, right? And that money should actually be abolished. But really, all money is a tool. It's a medium of exchange. It allows us to make transactions with each other based on value and value propositions. But the cool thing about cryptocurrency, now that it's come up, it's been so heavily gamified, and there's so many different cryptocurrencies that it's augmenting the way that we think about money right now, I believe. Of course, there's probably some conjecture with this, right? Because I'm just making this guess. There hasn't been studies done on cryptocurrency versus fiat currency. And this is something I think is really important, because scientists can start looking at the way cryptocurrency affects our minds, especially in heavy users. Well, that sounds like a strange addicted drug reference, but I think there's certainly some huge differences. And I've noticed personally, since I've started using cryptocurrencies, I automatically already feel freer. I feel like I'm able to relate to people in a lot better of a way, especially as it relates to transferring value to other people. And this happens in all the crypto ecosystems, internally and potentially externally as well. Let me just give an example of how we might think about this. And this is where I'll leave it, I think, on this topic until the actual event. But with fiat currency, there's been one study called the money empathy gap. And in this particular study, the researcher's name is Paul Piff. He did a study where he put two participants in a room, and the participants got to play Monopoly against each other. However, one of the players were heavily handicapped. They didn't make as much money. They couldn't roll the dice as much. They couldn't go around the board, win as many properties, etc. So the person who had more money in this rigged game, and you can see the parallels between the system that we live in that's highly rigged, where people get to, if they have contacts with the system, they're going to be easily making more money because they get to touch it first. But the person who was advantaged in this game started to scowl at the other person. They were making fun of them and laughing, and they started jamming their pieces around the board. And there was some food, there was a bowl of food close by, and they would bring the food in and they would be hogging it all and eating it. So, and a lot of people will say that it's strictly any money that causes the money empathy gap. But I think this is a phenomenon that is specifically tailored to fiat currency and the way it makes us think about money, simply because of its origins, right? Coming out of the system, having the ruler and the stamped on it, all the nasty, ugly symbolism and the thoughts of greed that come along with it. But I think cryptocurrency may allow this dynamic to shift over time because the playing field is more equalized, right? It's been more evened out. Where you can jump on, like we talked about Steam, you can jump on Steam and get involved in an ecosystem that's gamified and that's not automatically disadvantageous. And if you think it's disadvantageous, like if you think, if for instance, if you had an opinion that the Steemit ecosystem is corrupt some way, well, you simply stop using Steemit and you go on to another platform and play there. So this highly opt-in voluntary aspect of cryptocurrencies and digital assets necessarily changes our psychology versus the system. So as far as I know, I'm one of the first people who started talking about this particular idea, but that's not to say I'm special. What that is to say is we need people to actually do research on these topics and try to gain some insight into what cryptocurrency is doing to us. So I'm going to be talking about this subject, crypto psychology, and I'll also probably talk a bit about the cypherpunks. You know, I'm a fan of crypto history, and that has to do with our psychology as well. The people who envisioned cryptocurrencies before they even came into existence and were writing heavily about it, namely Eric Hughes, Timothy Mays. These guys wanted to create digital protections. They wanted to maintain privacy. They were all supporters of Murray Rothbard and anarcho-capitalistic philosophy, money philosophy, and they wanted to protect people as much as possible using encryption protocols, especially digital cash. And I think Eric Hughes was one of the first ones to mention it in his short work called the Cypherpunk Manifesto. And of course, Timothy May, he wrote the Cypherpunk, or sorry, the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto, which also briefly mentions different kinds of encrypted protocols for maintaining privacy and helping to destabilize the nation state and government.
Nice. So after you explained crypto anarchism or your perspective of that, it sort of made me understand your perspective on psychological anarchism more, because it seems to be more in relation to like indoctrinations of the state and nationalism and so on and so forth. But so when I read Psychologic Anarchist, for some reason, my perspective is like entirely spiritual as far as like the religious indoctrinations that are put on you from an early age. So the reason I bring that up is because I checked your Facebook out just to check your religious views, and it's you identify as an atheist. So I was thinking, what is your spirituality? Do you believe in God?
So yeah, that's a good question. I don't believe in a monotheistic God such as from the Judeo-Christian religions. I definitely have a spiritual perspective, and the spiritual perspective that I have is I think we all dance in a kind of mystery, right? We don't have all the answers to the nature of the universe. Certainly, when you take psychedelics, you get painted into this corner where your thoughts go to, wow, this is absolutely beautiful and amazing. And if my consciousness can be shifted this much to something that feels more real than reality, then something very wondrous and strange and beautiful is going on all at one time. And that's what those compounds have imbued me with. And of course, I have also had the thought that, man, this is God. This is some type of creation. So certainly I've had those kind of thoughts on psychedelics, MDMA, and different types of substances. But at the end of the day, I really try to step back and think, I still don't know matter of factly, right? I know what I felt when I was using these compounds. And as I started to put that all together, put this as how I felt versus this is the reality of what I know epistemologically, I came to the conclusion that it's very possible that this is some kind of vast godlike experience or imbued by some type of godlike spiritual entity. But I don't know that 100% matter of fact, just based on my own experiences, even if they're drug experiences. What I do know 100% is that I don't have all the answers. And I don't think that anybody does. So it's really this grand mystery where we get to make choices and we get to determine how we want to live our lives out. And to me, that is a huge degree of spiritual energy that I tend to abide by, and that I think a lot of people do as well. And so, you know, I basically, there's a, you know, and if we're going to talk strictly logic, there's a fallacy called God of the gaps, right? And God of the gaps is a fallacy when someone tries to make an argument that, oh, if we don't know what that is, if we don't understand that mystery, say the origins of the universe, then God done it. God must have done that. So you automatically fill that gap in with God. So I try to prevent myself from engaging in that fallacy by saying we simply don't know, but it could be God, certainly. So yeah, there's a degree of agnostic spiritualism that floods my philosophy, but I'm an atheist in the sense that I don't believe in any kind of monotheistic God. But better put, atheism just means a lack of belief in gods. With the right amount of evidence, then maybe that's the case.
Right. So the only reason that I'm picking apart the definition of atheism is because we were talking about words also, and it specifically defines the non-believing in a God or whatever. And that brings to my attention the word God. And I built this animation called Luciferium about this word. And it's just like anarchy. It has these negative connotations.
Right.
People don't understand it. So I actually spent like several years studying the word God. And the best way I can explain it as is a sequence, like the G clef that starts a musical string of notes. That symbol itself is basically like a three-phase tier, and it explains fractal mathematics and explains the 0 point. So the word God, we have to like get this, you know, personified thing out of our head and realize that it could potentially be the word God is like the sequence or the formula of creation at the center of all organic life that's possessed by consciousness, basically. But that's what the Luciferium is about, because this subject bothered me for so long, you know, and it was religion itself that kind of like started my rebellion, started my anarchism, you know.
Sure.
So,
sure. Yeah. Well said. Yeah, that's good. To me, what you're saying kind of reminds me of, you know, some people have referred to these ideas as a pandeism, panpsychism, pantheism. God is everywhere, all encompassing, or that it's vibratory to some degree, and music. And so sometimes, you know, have you ever read Jeremy Narby's book, The Cosmic Serpent?
I have not. What is it called?
The Cosmic Serpent, and it's about his experiences with ayahuasca, going into the jungle and taking ayahuasca.
Nice. With
shamans. And one of the things that came out of that was, you know, these shamans sing these songs, these Ikeros. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Mm-hmm. These songs like seem to give some kind of meaning to life, or actually bring life into existence. And that's what you were saying reminded me of that this vibratory nature of life, this spiritual, almost occult-like perspective of life, the universe, reality, everything seems to be almost sung into existence. And of course, Terence McKenna has talked about these in his books.
Love McKenna.
Food of the Gods, etc. Yeah, he's one of the greatest orators to ever live, in my opinion.
Oh, I've listened to every single word that man has said that's on the internet.
Yeah, wow, same.
What a blessing. What a blessing. It's funny that you say that this guy you were talking about had these experiences or came to this like enlightened intelligence on ayahuasca. I mean, I've done plenty of farmahuasca right here, you know what I mean? And I did ayahuasca in Costa Rica this year recently, and yeah, there's pretty much similar. It was like a lack of, there was no ayahuasquero singing in this experience or whatever, but in all these different experiences, even my freebase DMT experiences, there's this same sort of like intelligence that you're borrowing for this short amount of time, and then you have to give it back, like waking up from a dream. You know, you just want to stay there and just learn it, and then you just fade away. We'll fade back to this, you know. It's amazing.
Yeah, well said.
Hey, well, we can't wait to see you at Anarchadelphia. I just want to remind everybody that they use the coupon code Sterlin at checkout, that they'll save 5% on their tickets, and we will also match that and donate 5% to Sterlin. All right. Awesome. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, and see you at Anarchadelphia.
Thanks, Pat.
Peace, man.
See you, brother.